go. So my question is, my understanding is that you went with Laura back to Lebanon and you went to school with her. What the hell was that like? What do you,
Nobody questioned it, you know. My uncle would come down through Lebanon,
was it Harry?
Uncle Harry.
Okay.
He would come down every weekend. He would come to see us in Philly. But that was before the turnpike, and so he would have to come down through Lebanon, Reading, Pottstown, and then down to Philly. So when he came through Lebanon, he would stop and pick up Laura.
And then he would bring Laura down for you.
Bring Laura down to visit with us.
And would she go to your school?
Sometimes she would go to my school for the week, and other times I would go back with them and go to her school, and nobody ever questioned it.
What was it like to go to school with a bunch of strangers? I mean, the kids you were going to school with, they weren't your friends.
No, they were just school kids. So what? You don't necessarily know every kid in school, right?
Not when you have a class of 35. Were they big classes? Were they large classes?
How many kids were in the school, in the class?
Oh, God. In those days, there were really big classes.
Yeah.
Because I went to school with 30 kids in class.
Yeah.
So that was a large class.
Yeah.
What did the desks look like? Were they the ones screwed into the floor and they had the inkwell in them?
Yeah.
And then the seat was attached to the back of the front of the other desk. Yeah, solid wood with iron.
In fact, I had one of those class, one of the
Desks.
seats, the desk.
What do you mean you had? Oh, you had one while you were in school.
Gowan Avenue.
You didn't have one at home, did you?
Yes.
Yeah, at home.
At Gowan Avenue, we had one in the garage because Jenks was taking out their old desks,
Right.
which is what we grew up with and you grew up with, and they were switching them out for the desks that were mobile, that you could just move around. So, you guys bought one. You guys bought one. We put it in the garage,
Right.
and somebody stole it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it disappeared.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, that was very sad. That was very sad. So, Marty, you started.
Yeah.
It's recording. Marty started asking you about going to Lebanon with Laura. Now, how did you know Laura before that?
Well, on my first day of school in first grade.
Which was Houston?
What do they call that?
First grade was where?
It was in Kenderton.
Where the heck is Kenderton?
Kenderton was in Logan, in Tioga.
Oh.
Their first home was on Broad Street.
Okay.
And my first day in school, the teacher told Laura to show me the dressing room.
And the dressing room is where you hang your coat and hang your book bags.
Was, where we hung our coats. And so she took me in there, and from that day forward, she was my friend. And I think she was like 72 when she died. And we were friends through all the years. Really faithful friends. And but Laura lived in that area.
Which area?
Where the Kenderton School was. It was somewhere around 16th and Allegheny. and that's where Laura lived.
In
Her
Philadelphia.
father was a minister of the All Souls Church for the Deaf, and that was a 16th and Allegheny, in a little bit of the block.
And he was the minister there. His parents were deaf.
No,
Laura's
I don't know.
parents were deaf.
Yeah, Laura's parents are deaf, and her father was the minister of that church. And so that was our friendship all through the years. And I don't know how many years it was before we moved. I was in 4th grade, I think, when we moved to Logan. And we only lived in Logan for a couple of years. I went to David Burney School in Logan, and then we moved to Mount Airy, and we were to East Mount Pleasant Avenue, and we were there for, I guess, a couple of years, and
I think you were maybe 9. I think of you as 9 years old when you were at 2 East Mount Pleasant.
right,
Before you moved to 501 Durham.
yeah, I was 11 years old when I wrote that poem that was printed in the paper,
About?
in the local paper, about the harvest time is here again, and we shall cut the ripening grain. For young and old, the work appears. How now I forget the rest, but
Wow, that's pretty good. And you made that poem for a class?
yeah, I made it, and then it was printed in the local paper.
Oh. And then I remember you talking about either a poem or a story about the Temperance Union.
Oh my God. I'll never forget that. We used to have assemblies in the morning where they would open the
Curtain.
sashes or whatever you call them, and connect the rooms to make a big assembly room. And this one assembly that they had, there were a couple women from the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and they were there to give us a talk. And I didn't know this, but I always kind of fell asleep when they had assemblies because they were boring and I never had enough sleep. And so I was falling asleep, and I hear everybody saying, Jane, they're calling you. And I woke up, and here they had called my name and wanted me to come up to the front where the speakers were. And I didn't know what was happening, but I went, and they gave me a pin, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And it was in honor of my essay on temperance. And I was like half asleep when I went up to get it. And then I had that thing forever, and I cherished it because, it was a great thing. And then by the time we moved, it got lost in the move.
No.
And when I was an adult, I would have relished having that.
Because?
That would have been so much fun.
Because you no longer were believed in the Temperance Union.
Right. That's right.
So was that during the time of Prohibition then?
Well, that was after the prohibition.
Oh, but they were still trying to
Of course.
promote their agenda,
Right.
and you were already going into young adulthood or
Yes.
adulthood.
Right. That was what. I don't know what happened to it. Just got lost.
Happens.
Yeah.
Happens. So you met Laura, fast friends in elementary school, and then was you say her father was a minister? Was he deaf? Or
Yes.
he was deaf. So mom and dad were both deaf.
Her parents.
Laura was a hearing child,
Right.
and then you and Laura. Um, you and Laura.
Right.
When did she move to Mount Gretna or Lebanon?
Well, we moved first to Logan, and then we joined a Girl Scout troop up in that area, and Laura joined it too. And so we did most everything together. And I don't know how long it was after that they moved to Lebanon. Her father got an assignment up in Lebanon as a minister. And so that was the story, and we were friends ever since.
And then when it was through Laura, and you moving to Lebanon, or she moving to Lebanon, that you met Dad, who
Right.
was living in Lebanon
Right.
with his family.
Right.
And that's how you met Dad, was through Laura.
Except that by that time, so I was 13 and he was 18, and he was going to Philadelphia School of Industrial Arts, and it was very unusual for a 13-year-old to be paired with an 18-year-old.
Yeah, nowadays they would have a nowadays they'd have a it wouldn't be kosher
That's
to
right.
do that. It would be child.
But I really had a case on him, and it just grew.
I'm giving you the option. We appreciate it.
It's amazing. So, and that was my friendship with Laura, and it just never ended until her dying day. And unfortunately, she was a smoker, and she and her husband were both smokers, and they refused to give it up. And the rest of us smokers all gave it up eventually, but they refused to do it.
That'll be tomorrow.
So she eventually died, and he died.
That's why we
And
didn't stay here, Marty.
that was the story of our friendship.
I didn't want to.
But in the meantime, you met Dad, and then you and Dad start a real connection between Lebanon and
New York.
New York, and Dad was. From what I understand, Dad was working at Hershey, driving the milk truck
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
delivering milk at some point.
That
Maybe
was-
when he first got his license, I don't know.
That was in the...
But you may not have known Dad then,
No.
when he was driving the milk
That's
truck,
right, I
because you
was.
didn't meet him until he was 18.
Yeah.
And by then he was in college, and you were in junior high.
And he was going to college in Philadelphia. And when I would go to Lebanon, and he would be there that weekend or whenever the occasion was, and we would drive him home. however I came home, he would go with us.
So Laura must have known Dad just because it's small town Lebanon,
Yeah.
and they knew each other.
Right.
So somehow, do you remember how that first encounter was? What that was?
Well, there was when the Christmas holiday came around, or New Year's, Laura was writing to me and saying, I gotta come up for New Year's. She had a lot of dates lined up for me, and she didn't have to worry about it because they all wanted to be a date. And so one of them was Joe Deering, and I dated him. And I think from then on, we were, like, whenever I was in Lebanon for a holiday, he would be there. And so that's how our relationship started.
And did was Laura dating Jim at that point, or did that come later?
You know, that was much later. Jim's older brother George was a friend of Joe's, and I don't know how that came about, but she started dating Jim, and then afterwards, that's what happened.
And then I guess even though you were the age you were and Dad was the age he was, with you going to Lebanon, it wasn't a big deal with your family, I take it, between your mom and Dad. And how did you get up there? Was that Uncle Harry that would, because he had a job in Harrisburg or Gettysburg, he would...
Uncle Harry had a furniture store, and he would come to Philly to visit us every weekend. So it's on these weekends that Laura and I would get together. Either he would stop in Lebanon and pick her up and bring her down, or I would go back with him when he go back home Monday morning and spend the week in Lebanon.
And what was Uncle Harry's last name?
Cohen.
Cohen. And he had the furniture store in what city?
In Harrisburg.
In Harrisburg. So he came to Philly for what reason? Just to visit?
Oh, of course.
Get away?
He was very close to us. Actually, I considered him closer to me than my father.
And what was his, did he have an actual bloodline to your family as an uncle?
My mother.
It was your mother's brother? Oh, okay. So was your mother's maiden name Cohen?
I don't know. My mother's name was Bone, B-O-H-N.
B-O-H-N.
I don't know how that came about.
Oh.
I think somehow I heard that my grandmother,
Your maternal grandmother?
my maternal grandmother, was married the second time and had Uncle Harry as a baby the second time. So he was like a half brother.
Yeah. To your mother. Uh-huh. Yeah, lot of talk about Uncle Harry. He definitely was a fun guy.
He was the best. We nicknamed him. We nicknamed him Uncle Pete. I don't know where that came from.
Who knows where this stuff comes from, huh?
I don't know.
So Uncle Harry was your would shuttle you and Dad to each other, and even with the age difference, there wasn't a big to do about with your parents. But later on, when you guys got serious, there was more of it to do with your religions.
With my father.
With your father, and the religion being you Jewish and Dad being Catholic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was being groomed to be a priest.
Ah.
His mother had thoughts of his becoming a priest. He was an older boy and he was younger. And so
I didn't realize he was being groomed to be a priest. I certainly knew about him being an altar boy, and what a big deal that is. All altar boys are groomed to be priests by our in-house Catholic, Marty. Yeah, so obviously you guys knew each other for a long time before you even started thinking about
oh yeah.
serious dating.
Actually, I think I had a case on him forever.
Probably from the first get-go.
Yeah.
All the pictures were handsome pictures. He was a handsome guy.
Yeah, he was.
And you mentioned when Jesse was interviewing you about when he was over in whatever country it was, Germany during the war. There was, the towns girls, and yeah, he was a hunk. But it took a while for your parents to accept him.
Well, not my mother.
Not your mom?
But my father was. I don't know, he was against everything that I did.
Oh. Well, that's a different.
What did he say?
No, we'll get to that. So your dad was more of a hard nose.
Well, yeah. So right now, like let Joe break into shoes.
Oh, he said that your father let Dad break in his shoes when your dad would get new shoes. Oh yeah.
Well,
They had the same size feet.
I guess, I don't know. Joe would break in my father's shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they had the same size feet, and your dad didn't want to go through the pain of new shoes.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Marty didn't forget.
Do you have any other tidbits about that?
Tori and I are trying to get.
You know?
No, eventually, her father loved Joe better than any of the other damn
Brother-in-laws.
Yeah, because he was, like every time we would be preparing to go out for the evening, and as Joe would be coming down the stairs and passing the dining room, my father would say, "Joe, you want to play some pinochle?" Well, my father was a real pinochle player, and he wanted Joe as a partner to play pinochle. So Joe couldn't say no, and there would be our evening because he was enlisted to play pinochle.
Was that at 501?
Yeah.
Your dad would have pinochle games on a regular basis? Dad must have been a card counter. That's what makes a good pinochle partner.
But anyhow.
So you would be all dressed up, and next thing you know, you're not going out. Dad's cozying up to your dad.
So he played pinochle. I don't know what I did.
Went upstairs and changed your clothes.
Probably.
Do you remember who some of the other pinochle players were?
Oh, they were his old man friends. I can't even remember their
Did
names.
your mom ever play pinochle with them, or was it just the men?
Just the men.
Just the men. What would your mom be doing?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Probably cooking for the next night, or
Tell me about the. Tell me about because your mom was quite the cook. Tell me about how, like Sabbath. That was a Saturday night where Saturdays where you couldn't drive and you couldn't cook. And what was it? Sundown at 6 o'clock on Friday.
She would always stay up almost all night
Of
cooking for
Friday?
the weekend. Thursday.
Thursday. It had to be
She
Thursday.
would stay up and cook and bake and do all this stuff so that she wouldn't have to do it on the weekend.
Right.
And she made the best babka.
And babka is what?
Babka is like a coffee cake. It's just really like almost a bread, but a little bit sweeter, and it has a cinnamon sort of crumb for it. So she was famous for her babka. Very good. Now they have babka that's all chocolate and other stuff.
They've added other materials. I like the idea of adding chocolate to it, though.
Yeah.
That's a good addition.
It doesn't match. It doesn't fit.
So she would cook all Thursday because she couldn't cook come sundown Friday or Saturday, but she still had lots of people to feed. And I remember you talking about how the people who were maybe homeless or certainly without funds would come to the house, to the back door, I guess, of the kitchen, and she would feed anybody that came. She probably got to know these people pretty well over time, who they were.
I don't know. She would just welcome anybody in the house. And there was no such thing then as suspecting, you know. I don't know how they got away with it, but
They were just down on their luck, and your mom would feed them, and they'd eat and they'd leave.
yeah, it's amazing that my mom trusted them, but there was never a thought of anything else. Just never thought about them being maybe burglars or murderers. Or she just fed them. I would come home from school for lunch, and she'd be in the kitchen with the beggars.
So you'd walk home from school, have lunch at home,
Yeah.
and then you'd walk back to school. Did you do that with your siblings, or were you by yourself?
Well, I think it was just Betty and I were at the same time, and different ones of us paired off. I don't remember how that worked.
I kind of remember you telling stories of how, I'm not sure if it was going off to high school. I'm not sure who, maybe you and Aunt Ruthie and Aunt Rhea would walk out the doors the same time, but then invariably one or two of them would turn back and go home, and if the local police saw them, it was never a big deal that they weren't going off to school, but you always went. And the others might turn back and go home or go and do something else. Does this sound familiar at all?
No.
No? Not sure where I got that from.
Maybe you made it up.
Maybe I made it up. I'm good at making things up.
It sounds like a good idea. I don't know.
But I do remember you talking about 501, and the downstairs had the pool table and the bar and
We had a
big old
one-armed
party,
band.
and big old party place.
We had a cup or a container for nickels to put into the machine. And the milkman, the baker, the butcher, anybody who would come along would go down the basement and play the machine.
Maybe win the jackpot, you mean? Any idea where that machine came from?
Yeah, well, Herbie, my brother, had a friend who had some friends who were in the business of vending machines. So they got us a vending machine.
Of course.
Yeah, it was fun. It had a very colorful life.
Yeah. Sounds as though the 501 was quite the place, especially because I think most of you were older by the time you got to 501. I think you were maybe 13.
I was 18.
By the time you got to 501, you were 18. So at 2 Mount Pleasant, you were there from 9 until 18. You were there 9 years.
I was there, let me see. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't always get it right, but I thought you were at Mount Pleasant just for a few years. But then if you were 18.
When I moved to 501, it was when I went to New York, I was 18. It was after I graduated high school.
And where did everyone live? Where was your family at 501 at that point?
No, I think they were in Mount Pleasant Avenue. But when I came home, they had moved to 501.
Did they let you know that they moved?
No.
No.
I don't know how that worked, but I don't remember that. I know we weren't in that house when I left, but they had bought it when I was away.
And how long were you gone?
I was only gone for a little over a year.
That's actually a long period of time. I thought you were just gone for a couple months and then decided it wasn't working out.
Because after the show broke up, I was living around with the girls who were on.
You mean sleeping around?
No.
No. No.
Not Mom. No. Mom, you were the
No.
good one.
I wasn't into that then.
Then?
I was too young.